Hi. You want to go on a little trip into something called Earthflop? Sorry, I meant to say Earthshot. Full disclaimer, we're going to be scrolling a lot on my phone because I want you to see what I see. Because whenever I don't do that, people come and accuse me of being biased or bot or whatever else derangers like to accuse people who support and talk about Megan positively. We're going to start at the beginning because until this year, I personally did not know that this was even a thing at all. And until like a week ago, I'd never even tried to Google this nonsense because anything that Scooter Boy does, I'm not going to lie to you, I have no interest in because it ends up having incredibly low impact or just being for show or just, a PR move. But let's look at the Earthshot prize. Immediately, as soon as I open this page, I find out that they've recently had a ceremony and they've announced 5 winners. And that's all awesome and good and whatever, right? But here's where I have a problem with these 5 winners, not the 5 winners themselves specifically, but with the prize itself and having these specific 5 winners. And you'll see why in a little while. So we find out that the first winner is under the Protect and Restore Nature category. And then we have Clean Our Air. And then we have Revive Our Oceans, Build a Waste-Free World, and then finally we have Fix Our Climate. One of the main issues I have with these 5 categories is because it already, just from the beginning, you're already categorizing the climate issue into 5 distinct things that can be neatly compacted and packed into these specific 5 categories. And therefore, if you are a researcher or somebody who's working on a project or a prototype that is aiming to, alleviate some of the climate crises we have in the world, then you already need to channel yourself into 5 neat little categories that are, from what I've seen so far, entirely separate from everything else, which I have a problem with because that's not how the environment works. You can't remove people from waste, from clean air, from oceans, from all of that. The environment is a thing that is everyone and everything all at once, which is why the United Nations has something called the Sustainable Development Goals. And in that case, we have 17 goals. And I just want to demonstrate that very briefly to kind of show you how Earthflop is flopping. Here too, we're going to start at the very beginning, but in this case, full disclaimer, I am a little more familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, which I'm just going to call the SDGs from this point on because saying the whole thing is a mouthful. But anyway, I'm a lot more familiar with this because I work as an engineer and in academia specifically, and every single time you conceptualize a new project or a new prototype or anything like that, you need to tie it back to the environment and whether or not it's going to be sustainable for the people who are going to be using that new technology or using that new method of doing things, etc., etc. Because again, you cannot separate people from the environment in which they live. I'm sorry I have a lot of background noise today, but please just bear with me. But anyway, let's go straight to the first goal. So immediately you can see goal 1 says no poverty and goal 2 says 0 hunger, because these goals recognize that you can't, again, and I'm going to keep harping on this, you cannot separate people from their environment. You cannot try to build a more sustainable ocean or air or whatever, or 0 waste if people are hungry, if people are living in poverty. You need to address the people first before we get to the trees, before we get to the animals, before we get to the oceans. You need to address the people because people, as we now know, are some of the biggest impactors when it comes to these issues. If these people are not addressed, you're not going to get the 0 waste stuff that as Earthflop wants us to believe in, which is an initiative I wholeheartedly believe in, but how they're going about it is just so out of touch. But anyway, let's scroll down to see what the rest of these goals say. You see now good health and well-being, quality education. Again, if you're not having healthy people, you know the rest by now. So, and then as we go down, this is the other thing that I really love about the SDGs, is that they actually feed into each other. And they don't assume that once you've eliminated poverty, then you will have good sanitation, right? Every single aspect of people's lives is addressed as an individual thing. So now in goal 6, we have clean water and sanitation. And now I just want to take you down to a goal that I personally always have to incorporate into my work. So it's goals 9, 11 and 12. And 9 specifically tells us industry, innovation and infrastructure. 11 is sustainable cities and communities, and 12 is responsible consumption or production. This is where you would address, even though you have, as you go down, you have stuff like climate action, life below water, waste and all of that. These goals, when you put them together, when you click into them and see what they are actually all about, you can see they even go into the waste, into the air, into all of that. Because again, and say it with me, you cannot separate the environment from other aspects of the environment. It's impossible. But now let's go back into Earthflop to see how it is addressing its 5 different categories of the environment, I guess. So under the category of protect and restore nature, we have a finalist from Sweden, and I'm supposing that this is some kind of institution or project or again prototype, and they are called 10-year facility, and they are from Sweden and they are a finalist. I don't have issues with that. I don't even know what they do, but I don't have issues with that. What I have issues with is that as you scroll down, for example, under the category of cleaner air, we have the city of Bogota, Colombia. And then we also have the city of Guangzhou, China. And then as you go down, you will find out that we also have the country of Barbados. I don't have issues with any of these people at all whatsoever. And I don't have a problem with governments and cities going out of their way to build a better world for their people and for the world in general or whatever, right? What I have a problem with is why do we have governments competing at the same level as, say, for example, Lagos Fashion Week? Which brings me back to the first problem that I had with this prize is the nonsense categories. Why do you have these nonsense 5 categories? Because, for example, let's say under Save Our Oceans, you have 3 projects that are really good. And they are so good, in fact, that they are much, 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 much better than all of the others. So now you do have to award only one within the Save Our Oceans class. Do you get what I'm saying? But then the other 2 who are better than other categories, you can't award them because only one can be the winner in each category. So now you have to go for a lesser, and I'm using that because I'm struggling for a better word. I'm not saying any of these projects are lesser because I think all of these projects are really good and worth funding and supporting. Secondary to that, why do you have governments competing with individuals? Like, why? Just why? It's a freaking government. It's a freaking city. The resources that any government is going to have relative to everyone else, like in terms of like how they're going to do, because this is the third issue that I have with this prize, right? Is that they want something that is ready to go to market. Only people who are ready to go to market can apply to this. Like no academic researchers, no people who are, having just ideas. They want people who are already kind of like finished products. And so when you want that, there is no way that brilliant ideas that haven't been funded are going to get the funding. So it's kind of like when you're applying for a job and then the job requires you to have 5 years of experience, but you don't have 5 years of experience because you can't get a job. It's kind of like that. That's what Earthflop is. Like governments are in general, I'm not saying always because I fully understand that economic situations are not the same all around the world. But in general, as a whole, governments are going to have more resources, more researchers, more people on their hands to build these projects to a point that they can be ready to go to market faster than an individual who just has a brilliant idea in the township somewhere. They're making bricks out of urine. They are creating mushrooms that can eat plastic, all of that. Governments are going to have more resources and therefore more access to this kind of prize, because this kind of prize is the kind of prize that prides itself on getting finished products and then just giving them a whole bunch of money. And again, no offense to these projects, any of them. However, having said that, it needs to be said that a lot of people do not have access to this prize simply because of things like funds, resources. But all of that aside, and it's quite a lot to aside, but let's just get into one of the winners, which is actually somebody that I was rooting for, strange as that may sound. I wanted this woman to win. This is in the category of Build a Waste-Free World, and in this case, our winner is Lagos Fashion Week from Nigeria. We're just going to click on there to see what they're all about. And we have the challenge that they faced and the solution that they presented. Let's just assume that the challenge is a wasteful fashion industry, right? And let's see what Lagos Fashion Week's solution is. They say, founded in 2011 by Omoyemi Akerele, Lagos Fashion Week is leading a transformative movement. By placing circulatory, craft-driven innovation and community empowerment at their core, they're tackling fashion's biggest issues of overproduction and overconsumption. Now in its 15th year, Lagos Fashion Week has grown to become Africa's largest and most influential fashion event. They have become a vital cultural force, redefining the industry in Africa and beyond through a distinctly African lens. And I'm just going to stop it there because one, I'm out of time, and two, I already have so many issues with how this is presented. Again, I do not have issues with the initiative itself. I was actually rooting for this because this is freaking awesome. Lagos Fashion Week is amazing. Please, if you can, support it. Here's where I have a problem with this presentation and with this prize, because the prize has been, pigeonholed into this waste-free world category. We don't get any highlights of, the models, the fashion designers, the stalls that would have been there. The community that goes into building this kind of thing is completely absent from this. The only thing that's being highlighted is the waste-free initiative. Again, it's a noble thing, and I'm so glad that this is a thing, and I'm so glad that this won, because I cannot imagine the amount of good that this money will go on to do. But Earthflop is not interested in the human aspect of any of this. They are not interested in highlighting Lagos Fashion Week as an event on its own. They're only interested in how it feeds into this waste-free world category that they've pigeonholed this initiative into, feeding into the first problem I have with this prize, that they've removed the human element from the environment, which, again, why? Like, Lagos Fashion Week is not removed from all of the societal factors that are currently happening in Nigeria. It's not removed from the unemployment. It's not removed from what even is inspiring this kind of consumption in Nigeria specifically. We're not getting any of that from Earthflop. And when you go and look at Lagos Fashion Week, they address all of this. But Earthflop isn't interested in any of that. And I have so many more things to say. I have so many thoughts on this, but yeah, that's just one of the many reasons I have so many issues with Earthflop. Sorry, I meant to say Earthshot. And as always, thank you for watching, and hopefully see you in the next one where we're not looking at nonsense.